Hello and welcome to another bodgit and leggit video. Now I had a question and I was asked, he said his fan wasn't working in his car, how does he know what's wrong? I answered it, but it's very difficult to kind of answer it in text, so I said I'll do a video on how to test it basically. There's a few things I always do when you're testing anything electrical. Just keep it simple. Just test the components that belong to that. Don't look at all the wires and think, oh, this is going to take forever. Just look at the components related to the problem you are dealing with. And basically what we've got, we have a radiator, we have a fan, we have a relay, we have a fuse, and we have a radiator switch. Now, there's a couple of different radiator switches. You might have a radiator switch that's screwed into your radiator, or you could have one near your thermostat. I'll go through everything in a lot more detail. Now, he said his fan wasn't working. What's the best way to do it? I have a 12-volt battery here. Now, if you're going to do this, you have to be careful. If you've got CAN bus wire or anything like that, you have to be very, very careful what you're about to do. If you've got CAN bus wire, I suggest you disconnect your battery for this, because you can just cause masses of problems. The easiest way to test if your fan is working, now if you've got a power probe, perfect. I don't have a power probe, so Mr. Power Probe, send me one. Sorted. And this is the way I do. So you've got a 12-volt battery and a couple of leads, simple. So all I'm going to do is connect it up to my 12-volt battery. Now, we have two wires here. You would normally see a plug here, but I use this for something different. So you would have a plug. Disconnect the plug from the car, so you only got the two wires going into the fan. And very, very simply, if you want to know if your fan is broken or not, connect the wire up to it. I'm just going to touch it up here. And as you can see, fan is working. So you now know it's not your fan. If that doesn't work, it's your fan. Simple, game over. Replace the fan, you're going to be sorted. Now, what I do suggest though is if it's the first thing you really want to try is your fuse. That's the first thing to do on any electrical problem, is look for the fuse, because the amount of times the fuse is blown, and that saves hours of work. So check your fuse. Now, with it being a fan, you're going to have a fairly high amperage through. This is a 30 amp fuse. So that's the first thing you want to check. Next thing, if your fuse is okay, well then check your fan or check whatever you happen to be working on. If your fan works, well, there can only really be a couple of things. You've got a relay and you've got a fan switch. Now, what a fan switch basically does is just imagine it as a kettle. As the water heats up, it heats an element inside here, and when it gets to a certain temperature, whatever that temperature happens to be, on most cars it's around 88 degrees, but it just depends on your car. This will then basically switch, which will send a power through your relay to your fan. Simple, really is essentially it. So, the way to test your relay, well, there's a couple of ways of testing relays. Do you want to know if it's your relay or not? Let's get you a bit closer so hopefully you can hear this. Now, if you've got something with a relay, you can physically hear it clicking. And especially if you hold your fingers on it like this, you'll be able to feel it clicking. Now, you can obviously only be able to feel it clicking once your car gets up a temperature, once it sends a signal. But the first thing you can do is pop out the relay and check to see if you've got power. If you haven't got power to the relay, well then you've got a problem with your wire somewhere. So this is why I say you check your fuse first. And if your fuse is okay, well then unfortunately this is the worst thing, because you could have a break in your wiring system somewhere, which is the worst thing to find because it can take forever. But if you haven't, so let's just imagine you haven't, and let's also imagine that your thermostat and your water pump are okay, because I know I'm going to get, well, your thermostat and your water pump could be gone. Yes, but this is not an overheating problem. This is a fan not working. Let's just assume your thermostat is okay and your water pump is working, and then you come on to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly just wire this up to my 12-volt battery. Hopefully you'll hear this clicking. Hopefully that's coming through camera. Now, once you can hear a relay clicking, you know you're okay. Now, there is a couple of gadgets you can buy to test a relay. We have a test buoy here. It's called a test buoy. And what this does is, I don't think the camera's picking that up. That's glowing red. This detects magnetic fields. And there's a little coil inside there. So that's glowing red. If I disconnect the power, as you can see, it doesn't glow red. So if you've got this little tester and you can't hear this clicking, you can put the test on straight away and you can see, hopefully that's coming through, you can see it glowing red. I'll just show you with the battery here, with the magnet, sorry. Hopefully you can see that. And the stronger the light, the stronger the field is. So that is a very good gadget to test your relay. If you haven't got any gadgets, you haven't got anything to test your relay, honestly, these relays are very, very cheap. It's just as easy just to pull this out and place another one in its place, because they're only a couple of quid. So if you've got nothing fancy, just pull it out and replace it, end of story. You can even take one out of the car which you definitely know is working, providing it's got the right pin outs, and you're okay. One thing you do have to be careful of is you need to make sure the amperage is enough. This is a 40 amp one. If you've only got a 10 amp one, it's not going to run a fan, so just be aware of that. So let's say then, okay, well then this is fine. But the only thing you're really left with is this radiator switch. And like I said, what happens is, as the water passes through this, the water is heating up. As it reaches a certain temperature, this switches on, essentially, sends the power, which then tells this to spin. And again, these are very, very cheap, and they do give problems. So it's a very easy thing to check out for. The fans also do give problems. But if you've tested all them, or if you've replaced these two, because again they're very, very cheap to replace, if you've got nothing to test them, I would suggest just replace these two because they're very, very cheap. If it's not working after all that, well then unfortunately it comes down to wiring. You've either got a wire somewhere in the car that is split, that is cut, or something like that, and unfortunately this is the worst problem because it could be anywhere. The first place I would suggest is check the plug that goes into here. Make sure the pins are nice and clean, make sure there's no dirt, there's no corrosion or anything, and make sure the wires going into the plug are nice and secure. That's kind of the worst case scenario, in the sense of, because if there's a wire that's going in your wiring loom, it could be underneath your dash, and believe me, it could be a nightmare to find. So it's just going to be very, very quick and simple. You can see I did it on the bench because it's a lot easier trying to film it than do it inside a car. And it really is as simple as that. As long as you keep everything simple, so you know if you're just working on a window or you're just working on the fan, just keep everything isolated so you're not going to get confused, and honestly it is very, very simple. These parts to replace, they're very, very cheap. If you've got no test equipment, you can just put these two in, cost you a few quid, and honestly it's simple. So that's what I suggest. And really, essentially, it's as easy as that. Now, like I said, yes, there is potentially other problems, water pumps and thermostat, but that's not the question he asked. So I'm only doing, he said his fan isn't working. Now if you've got a problem with your thermostat, especially if it's stuck closed when then the car overheats, but your fan will come on, but your car will overheat. And the same again with your water pump. If your water pump's gone, now normally when your water pump's gone you can physically hear it. But again, the fan will switch on because the car is hot. But again, that's not the question he asked, so you know, we don't need the comments down like saying, oh, it could be your water pump. Yes, but this is not for what we're doing on this video. So just keep it nice and simple, test your wires, couple of little different connections. The fuse is the first thing to do. Get a 12-volt power supply, and like, you know, very, very simple. That is really essentially it. In my experience, the two common things to go is your fan and is your fan switch. The relay doesn't, well, it does give problems, but nowhere near as much as these other two. Sorry, also your fuse as well. Them three things. So your fuse, your fan switch, and your actual fan. They're the three that kind of give the most problems, and very simple to replace. Now your fan might not be simple to replace depending on where it is, but you know, it really is, it's as simple as that. So look, I hope this helps. Thumbs up and subscribe, and don't forget to get your hands dirty. See you for the next one.